What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. The Azura Game Club, home of the Bad Girl Coven. I'm your Coven leader, Emily. Today we're talking Resident Evil 2, not the remake. I know the remake is up there, but I don't actually have a physical copy of Resident Evil 2. I always just play it on the PlayStation Network, and that is a great version that I don't think you can get anymore. But for those who don't have that, you can just emulate it or something. But yeah, I remember playing this a lot back in the day. I guess I should go over my thoughts briefly again on Resident Evil 1, why I skipped right to 2. Well, I did a video on Resident Evil 1 a long time ago. That was the remake, but I did touch on a lot of elements of the original game in that remake and compare and contrast. I know it's kind of like my Twin Snakes versus my actual Metal Gear Solid review, like what else was there to say, but I played through Resident Evil 1 again right before playing 2, and I think it's a really good game still. Still think it holds up. Obviously, control-wise, it's a little awkward, but I mean, it is still reasonably well for its time. There are some frustrating things, some things that carry over to this one too. This one's a little better controlling, I would say, but um, it's weird. You can use the analog stick, but I always find myself using the D-pad for some reason. I feel like it just works better, like when you're just moving around. But when I'm in like combat, I always use the analog stick. I don't know. I'm so weird. The other thing is that the button is R1 and then X to shoot instead of R2 and X, like Silent Hill did it. So that really threw me off when I was playing Resident Evil 1, and then by the time I got to Resident Evil 2, I was just kind of used to it. But I still don't really, because then you're like this instead of like this. This is where your hand feels more natural, but then you're like up here doing it. I mean, I guess a lot of games kind of do that with the R1, R2, or R1, L1. I don't know, R2 and L2. It just feels more like the more natural position for your pointer fingers, and I'm sure I've contrasted that in the past and said that, like, this is the better setup, but I don't know. Anyway, so that was a thing. Resident Evil 2, okay, so I should talk about 1. So Resident Evil 1's great. I love Resident Evil 1. It's one of my favorite, like, Resident Evil games. It's one of my favorite, like, horror games, I suppose. It's not really horror. It's kind of campy horror. There are some, like, moments of terrifying, the uh, the zombie turning around, of course, is a classic example of that. The hunters are always kind of a devastating enemy to get around, and I feel like I had to redo things a lot in Resident Evil 1, specifically when the hunters were there in the mansion, because there's a lot of stuff to do, and there's not a ton of great save points, and you don't always have a ton of item space. Although if you play as Jill, you get the 2 extra spaces. Um, in this game, there's actually an item where you get a side pack, which you can either pick up that or the machine gun, um, or the submachine gun or whatever it's called, which has like a percentage of ammo, which is just weird. Why there's no bullets, I don't know. It's just a percentage. A lot of things in this game have like a percentage. There's like the flamethrower, and there's like an electric gun that has that too and stuff. But like you never really feel like an omnipresent sort of villain, because it's kind of a twist villain at the end of the game. But in this game and in the next game, especially in either campaign, because there's 2 campaigns, you definitely feel the tension of a villain that can come and fight you at any moment. With Birkin, it's a little less that, but he still is, I feel like, a pretty intimidating villain, given um, everything. And he's got a pretty interesting backstory. The Tyrant in the first game is just like, it's a boss, and that's cool. It's a cool boss. I mean, it's very iconic, but, like, Birkin has a backstory, and you see his wife, like, she gets really angry and tries to take revenge for him a couple times, and then, like, Sherry is his daughter, and you're trying to protect her. So there's, like, a whole dynamic going on here with Birkin. So he's, like, not only a more well-written villain, which I feel like is cool, but he also has the backstory of, like, inventing these 2 viruses, the T virus and the G virus now, which is a even more advanced form of, like, the T virus, and he's basically backed into a corner by Hunk and his guys from Umbrella, and they're like gonna kill him. So what does he do? He just takes the G virus before they can like get any samples of it, and he just wrecks them and destroys them and stuff. It's like, it's a pretty cool backstory, and I like the element of being in the city in this game. You know, in the first game, the mansion is iconic. I love the mansion. I love the non-linearity of that. This game is more straightforward until you get to like the police station. I think that's the most open area. After that, it's pretty linear. Maybe the factory is a little non-linear, just a little bit. Not. No, honestly, even the factory is pretty linear, so I'm not gonna even give it that one. But you can branch off a little bit, but it's not much. But the police station is very iconic and is a good location. There's a lot of even so, it's a little bit linear, but you know, like there you can definitely branch off and explore a lot of rooms and stuff. It's like a smaller version of the mansion, or maybe about comparable of the mansion in the first game there. Maybe not as iconic, but I mean, to some people it is, and I think for this game, that's what really stands out, is the police station as being something pretty iconic. I feel like after that, the locations get a little bit, like, You know, like, you got the sewers, you got, like... And that's basically it until you get to, like, the lab. There's, like, that factory that you're in for, like, 5 seconds, but I always consider that, like, part of the lab, you know? But anyway, so Birkin's a good villain, and he shows up at enough times in your first playthrough to be intimidating, but then you get Mr. X, and Mr. X is just, like... Especially in the remake, obviously, he's very... present, but I kind of liked him being a B campaign thing in this game, in the original. And you know, the thing is, there, you know, everyone like just likes to pretend like the remakes have taken over for these like old games, but these old games are like really good and honestly, maybe better than the remakes in a lot of ways. I like well, I only ever played this remake, but well, and the first one, but you know, I would say the first one's probably better than the original game, but like the 2 remake, it's a different type of game, and it's a little less like the original. The original remake of Resident Evil on the GameCube was very close to the original game, and it only, if anything, expanded upon that game. In this game, you know, there are puzzles and stuff in the remake, but I don't know, it's just that original game has a certain feel to it, and I really like that. And I hear that the 3 remake, I'm not prejudging it, but I hear that it's not as good. So, you know, and I really love Resident Evil 3, and we're going to get to that next time. But my intention is to go through the older games before going through the remakes of said games. And then, you know, then we have a perspective on that. Because these are different enough, I feel like, to probably do some kind of different video about them. So, I like both of the characters and their scenarios in this game. Of course, I, like, prefer Claire, and I like her more as a character. But Leon also is iconic, you know? I mean, he gets his own big game in Resident Evil 4, and Claire kind of gets shafted. Going forward. She gets Code Veronica, which, you know, desperately needs a remake, I would say. I didn't mind the remake in Darkside Chronicles. I thought that was a pretty good on-rails shooter remake of it, but I would really like sort of in this style remake, or maybe even keep it similar to the old game, because I do think the old game is good, but Code Veronica has the dubious honor of being like the hardest Resident Evil game, and so it's just hard to go back to that first one, you know. And a lot of those kind of elements, like the tank controls and stuff in this game, which I don't hate, I actually kind of like in a way, but they do really kind of get cumbersome when it comes to like the Mr. X fight in like the second playthrough. Like, there's no way to avoid that guy unless you're like really good, you know. He is so fast, it's almost unfair. You just kind of have to have some healing items at that point. And I was playing on the easy one too. I did the normal mode for the last one. I tried that for this one, and I couldn't even get to the police station, so... Oh, nice. This shouldn't be this early in the soundtrack, but I used to listen to this song like all the time. Especially that part. What the fuck? Why did it? Yeah. Anyway. Um. So yeah, I I really like Resident Evil 2. I think it's a really good expansion of Resident Evil 1, and you actually get to go to the Raccoon City you've been hearing about. Seeing the city is cool, but you only see like a little bit of the city. You don't see a lot of the city. You see a lot of the city, more of the city, I would say, though, in Resident Evil 3, and I think that's where that game also shines. But you actually, Resident Evil 3 is so interesting because it's like, it takes place before and after, and kind of during, I think, Resident Evil 2 in some sense of it. So it just very, very interesting timeline wise. It's kind of before and after, if I remember correct, for the most part. But so you get to like return to the police station and stuff. But this is your first go at like an iconic location like the Raccoon City Police Station, and you get some nice nods to like the STARS members from the previous game, who are iconic characters in their own right. Like Jill is probably like my favorite Resident Evil character. Like Barry, he's awesome. He's so underrated. I mean, he's only got like what 2 or 3 games that you can play as Barry in, like Gaiden and like the second Revelations game I think you can play as him in, and then like the first Resident Evil. I mean, you don't play as him in that game, but yeah, he's in it. And he's briefly in Resident Evil 3 in one of the endings, which, that has a lot of endings. Interestingly enough, the first game has like 4 or so different endings, and maybe more. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of like Silent Hill that had 4 endings. But then you get Resident Evil 2 that only has 2 endings, but only because you play the 2 different scenarios. So that's interesting. And I mean, it's basically the same ending. It's just there's no variance in endings, let's say. So that's interesting. I played Leon B and Claire A campaign, so I started with disc 2. I like to do that one, I guess. I think last time I played as Leon A, Claire B, that was years ago though. I used to play this game on my PC. I had like burned versions of these games on discs or whatever, like when I was in high school, and that's how like I played them like secondarily. Originally I played them on the PSN, and then I played those like burned versions on those discs like after the fact, and I remember playing those. I even have like old footage of me playing those like somewhere. Um, I don't know if it still exists, but I used to have it, like gameplay footage of it or whatever. It's just really interesting. But yeah, I used to like playing this. I really, I would play Resident Evil 3 more. This is kind of the one I played the least out of the 3. I mean, I always go back to like 1, and I haven't been back to 2 or 3 in like a long time. So, but I do think it is a good game, gameplay wise, and it's a bit more actiony. There's a lot more zombies to shoot down, and you're not meant to just run around all of them. I'm sure you could, but they've got stuff like safes now where you can go and put in combinations and stuff, and that only happens a couple of times in the game. It's not like a Last of Us 2 situation where you get to do that all the time. By the way, not to sidetrack too much, but I was very conflicted on my thoughts originally, and after seeing a lot of analysis and really digging into The Last of Us 2, I really liked The Last of Us 2, and I kind of want to bump my score up a bit on that. I'd probably give it like a 9.4 or something, or like a 9.3 or somewhere in the 9s. I think I gave it like an 8 or something before, but I would definitely bump it up a bit because I think there's a lot to like there. It's just a really depressing game. Anyway, back to Resident Evil 2. Good game. Like I said, Birkin, he's kind of like the main boss you fight throughout. There's not that many bosses. I feel like there's a lot more bosses in the first game. There's like the alligator. Other than that, it's like Birkin, right? He's like the only boss battles. Unless I'm forgetting one. But then in the other campaign, you also have like the encounters with Mr. X. They're not really boss battles, but they're like he'll just like pop out at random times on like the police station and stuff, um, and you can either choose to fight him or leave. It's kind of a disappointing system in the terms of like if you compare it to like Nemesis, because Nemesis had like items, like important items. If you defeated him, you would get like upgrades for your gun and stuff like that. If you defeat Mr. X, all you get is like ammo, which is like, yeah, that's fine. He's not that hard to defeat. I mean, at least on easy. Um, so is it worth doing? I mean, I don't know. I just always found it a little bit easier to like fight him rather than like run around him because of like his big, bulkiness, and he would always just attack if I like tried to run around him, and then so yeah. But I think Mr. X is pretty intimidating, especially like I said in the remake there. But in the original, even he's fairly. I feel like the remake kind of captured what they probably wanted to do with Mr. X back in the day, where he'd just like stalk and intimidate you the whole time. And I had a little bit of like PTSD from the last time we played the remake, like the only time we played the remake, honestly. Me and my friends played it. Like I would see certain rooms in the mansion, and I'd be like, oh yeah, here he was. Or sorry, the mansion, the police station. And I was like, oh yeah, here he was. He was always like stalking us in this hallway and like in the library and shit. And it's like, but there's a lot of obviously elements that they took from this game. I remember when I was doing my B campaign this time, and like I finally beat Mr. X. By the way, I've got a little rant about this. I mean, it's not really a rant, but it's a complaint. After you beat Mr. X, which is already hard enough, and there's a typewriter at the back of the fucking train, if you take the time to run back there, you can use the item box, but you try to use the typewriter, it says, oh, I don't have any time for that. Are you fucking kidding me? I want to fucking save so I don't have to do the fucking Mr. X fight and run all the way back there and waste 5 minutes of my fucking time doing all of that stuff just so I can try my hand at the final boss again. Because I failed him on the first few times because I didn't have enough healing items because I'm an idiot and I need to conserve more healing items. I had this same problem when I replayed Silent Hill recently. I did that right before I played this game, but yeah, you need to conserve healing items and whatnot. So, but I managed to get through finally. It's kind of bullshit because like that whole fight is pretty bullshit because like it's like a cool fight, but also like the odds are so stacked against you. Like on paper, it's a good idea, but like you have to like hit him 4 times with like the shotgun, which is like fine. But he's sitting there depleting your health, and I had 2 healing items, and one was like the full heal, and one was like most heal, like 2 herbs, and then I had like the red and green herb kind of thing. So, and then when Ada throws down the rocket launcher, it's like you go over to pick it up, but like if you're not precisely timing it, he's gonna hit you and kill you, and it's just bullshit. But anyway, once you finally frickin' get him, then you have to fight the other boss, which like he's not that hard and he doesn't take that many hits, especially if you got the other rocket from the rocket launcher that Ada gave you, that you can use on him, and then he only takes like I don't know, like 4 or 5 shotgun blast. Probably not even that much. I think it was like 3 is what I did, but yeah, it's always cool to see Birkin like hanging over the train there. And I think I remember that from like the Dark Side Chronicles. Is it Dark Side Chronicles that remakes 2? Pretty sure it is. Or is that? Well, I haven't played Umbrella Chronicles, so it must be Dark Side Chronicles. Yeah, because it's all of Leon's kind of campaigns there. And Claire, for some reason, on the Code Veronica there, which is also on that. So, that's a really interesting game in its own right. I need to go back and play those, because I really did enjoy Dark Side Chronicles. That was a good game. Especially the remakes of these games that they did in there. I'd like to play the original Umbrella Chronicles, too. That'd be a lot of fun, because I know they kind of have some elements of Zero, I think, and like Resident Evil 1 in there, and then there's like a whole other separate campaign in there as well. Did 3 ever make it into any of those? I don't think it it honestly ended up in any of those, but maybe it was in an Umbrella Chronicles. I don't know. I haven't really dove deep into that one, but Dark Side Chronicles was good. Anyway, so yeah, it's more Resident Evil, and it's very good for being more Resident Evil. I like how there's a lot of kind of little things that'll affect the other playthrough too. Like you can put the cords in one of the hallways to like have the shutters down when you play on your B campaign, or like if you take the side pack, or if you take the submachine gun, the other character gets whatever you left behind. So that's cool. Um, there's like certain upgrades to certain weapons too. That's cool. Like when you upgrade the shotgun, it's like a lot better. There's like a Magnum parts upgrade, which I didn't find the Magnum because apparently it's in a safe in the Stars office, which I didn't go and spend too much time looking around in. So that was my bad on that one. But I kept finding like Magnum ammo, and I'm like, well, where's the Magnum at? Um, Turns out I just missed it, but yeah. Um, and having the two campaigns is kind of nice because then you'll recognize elements from your previous playthrough, but then certain things are different. And you actually get to go into all of the rooms. Like there's certain rooms, like specifically one I remember is like in the lab, there was like a room that you can't go into as Claire, and then you can go into there as Leon, and you're like, oh, there you go. Like on the B campaign, so that's pretty neat. Um, I had trouble with the alligator, but I read in the Resident Evil guide that I have here. Yeah, by the way, I have these for 1 and 2. I think I have 2 guides for 1, but I don't have the third one. I ordered it, so it's coming. So for when I play that game, but I got all these like super cheap at Disc Replay like a long time ago when they still had good prices, so that was really cool. But it's a pretty decent guide. It doesn't tell you anything about like the final Birkin form or whatever. It just kind of skips over that, which is bullshit. You know, it's like I'd like some advice on that, you know, and I have no healing items or whatever, but there's not a lot of advice to give. Just shoot it with the rocket launcher and survive, I guess, you know. But um, obviously the voice acting has taken a step up here, and the story was definitely better. There wasn't really that much of a story in the original, but like it was interesting for what it was. But this game definitely ramps up like the story and the characters and stuff, and they actually give the characters like characterization and stuff, and it's like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like Ada's cool too, you know, with the whole Leon campaign there. She's great. Um, Even Sherry's not that bad. Like, there's a couple of it's really interesting. There's a couple of sections where you play as Ada or you play as Sherry based on which campaign you're on, and then you have like less like weapons and stuff to no weapons in the case of Sherry to like go and do anything with, but it's certainly interesting, and it would like definitely develop for like when you play as Carlos like in the third game there or whatever. Um, I think the first Resident Evil would have been really interesting if there were segments where you switched off between characters or something. Like if one of your characters didn't get captured and, you know, like all that. So, but yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot to say. The Licker, that's an iconic new enemy, you know. There's some new enemies. There's stuff like that. It's a fun game. It's a good addition to the Resident Evil series after the first game, and it just does a lot of what Resident Evil 1 did, bigger and bolder and more actiony. But, you know, there is a certain charm to the original Resident Evil as well that the second and third games don't necessarily capture. So, um, there's some pros and cons, but, you know, I mean, overall, it's the cons are severely less than I feel like the pros are really good. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It has some good puzzles. They definitely did more puzzles and tried to be bigger and better with them and have cooler solutions and stuff. There's a lot of those, and it's got an iconic couple new locations with the lab and like the police station there. Um, so that's cool. Um, the new characters are great, and they definitely give a lot to the franchise. And obviously, Leon and Claire are iconic characters, so that's cool. And Ada, of course. Even Sherry, like you get to play as her in a later game, I think, or something. Right? Isn't that one of the Revelations games or something? You're out like playing as Sherry, so. And it expands, like I said, the lore. Like you have like the T virus, and now there's the G virus. Which I don't feel like they bring up all that often. It's usually the T virus they keep bringing up, but I feel like this virus must be kind of on the path to, because they're always trying to make these viruses that'll like actually like enhance like people, right? So like Wesker, like in Resident Evil Code Veronica and like 5 and stuff, that virus must be kind of like the next step from this one where they actually kind of perfected it, right? So um it's important to the lore and interesting in the lore and stuff as well. And of course, you know, this is one of the two games that you can actually play within Raccoon City, like one of the two like really canon games. I think there's like Operation Raccoon City, which I don't barely think really counts, but Raccoon City's like kind of an iconic location too, and I really like the second Resident Evil movie that's kind of based off of this game. I think that's probably the best of those movies, and so that just says a lot, It's based off the second and third game, but that says a lot that it is. But I do really like the third game. I feel like more than this game. We'll see. Maybe that'll change. I don't really think it will, but I love Claire. I do love Claire. I love Jill. I love playing as Jill. She's great. She's always my pick to play as in Resident Evil 1. I hardly ever play as Chris, but oh yeah, that's the whole thing too. Like Leon, and he's got the lighter just like Chris did, and then Claire's got the lockpick like Jill did. So and you can unlock like cabinets and chests and stuff like what do you call them, drawers, I guess, in like desks is what I was trying to say, like you could in the mansion in the original, but for Leon you need like small keys or whatever, for any place that you could lockpick as Claire. So that's interesting. So it brings a different dynamic to things, but it is interesting, like the two scenarios interconnecting, and I think that was a really well utilized mechanic, because then you kind of, like I said, you see things in the first playthrough, and then by the second playthrough, you kind of know things, but it's still a little bit different, and it's kind of a little bit arranged, and that's nice because you're playing through it a different way, and you're still hearing like the conversations that you heard in the first playthrough, but now you're like the other characters, so like they'll call at the same times and stuff. So they actually light up pretty well too, and there's a couple of things that are kind of different based on whatever, but it is interesting, and it's cool too because like at the beginning of the game your paths like diverge. So like in my playthrough on the A campaign, you'll go through the gun shop and go that way to get to the police station, but on the B campaign you actually go the other way, and then you go like through this guard station or whatever to get to the police station. So it's interesting. I like the cinematics too in a sense, because like the first, at the very beginning there, I knew this from the Resident Evil 2 like remake there, but like I forgot all about like the Claire like sequence at the beginning there where she's like at the gas station, and then like where she comes through the alley. That's where I always remember. I always remember the Leon part of it, where he's, the cop, and then he sees her and he's like, duck, boom. You know, I remember that part, but I never remember the other part. And then they actually make that, like, the first part of a level in Resident Evil 2, the remake there. So, we'll see. I mean, I think that's a faithful remake of the game for a modern audience, but I still really just love this iconic PS1 style of Resident Evil, and I think you can't really recreate that in the modern day. I mean, you can, but they're not going to. And so I would say, you know, people who are just trying to get into it now, yeah, you play like the remake of 1 and then you like play these two, which are completely different games, you know, from the remake of 1. The remake of 1 is more like what I would have wanted the remakes of the other two games to kind of be like. It is more in the style of the original. So, I mean, it can be done. They just don't want to really make them in this style anymore. So, I mean, that's the disappointing part. They're more action-y now, and that's just what it comes down to, you know. And they are much scarier and horror-wise in the remake here, but, you know, especially with Mr. X chasing you around. I mean, those were tense moments in this game, too, but it's like, he can only do so much in this game. In that game, he can actually do a lot, and it's oh boy, you know, so, yeah, but I feel like this game is good and iconic in its own right. Like I said, I still probably prefer the other two games in this original trilogy, but this is a great Resident Evil, and I had a lot of fun playing it, and it was still, just like Silent Hill and all that, it was just one that I wanted to stay up into the late hours playing, even, you know, when I shouldn't, so I think there's something special just about these, like, old PS1 games where they make you want to do that, you know. I don't want to say games have gotten bad, because obviously there's still a lot of great games, but they're not always, like, consistently this good anymore, you know. And I'm not saying this game is perfect, because it sure as fuck isn't. A lot of these, like, frustrating moments, like I was talking about with some of those boss fights, and just, like, different camera angles sometimes kind of affect you, because it's like you're just trying to. In the first game, it wasn't as bad, but I mean, it was still there. But you're trying to, like, since this is kind of like a bigger thing now, and then there's like more camera angles, so like you'll be trying to step there, but then you get, because there's more enemies now you get attacked more by like the zombies and stuff, and it gets to be a little less fair, I feel like, in that regard. Or the enemies, some of the enemies are a lot faster now, like the lickers and stuff, so it's harder. Maybe that's just a skill issue, but like, I don't know, some of that kind of stuff bugged me. Or like the stuff I was talking about, like at the very end, where you have to run all the way around, and then they get you to, you know, you do all this stuff. They just want to waste your time during the segment where you're not supposed to be wasting time. Because then you get back on the train after the power's on the train, and then it's like, oh, well, the gate's not open. You gotta go back out and fight all these zombies to open the gate. And it's like, fuck you, game. At least let me save. You know, if you're gonna make me do all this shit, at least let me save. But they don't want to let me save, so I don't know. I'm just a little bitter about that, I guess. But other than that, it's pretty iconic and great. I really enjoy it, and it added a lot to the lore and everything of the Resident Evil games. And if this game wasn't as good as it was, I don't think 3 would be nearly as good as it was, because it relies on some locations and stuff from this game, and kind of builds on the lore of the Raccoon City part of the whole outbreak, and it really shows the beginning of said outbreak before they, you know, obviously nuke Raccoon City at the end of the next game there. So that's really cool. You know, these 3 games are like a perfect PS1 trilogy, I feel like, and you know, obviously they have their problems and stuff, but I don't know if there's any other trilogy on the PS1. Maybe the Spyro games, but even those, like, 2 is a little less good than 1, in my opinion. And the third one's great, but, you know, like, I don't know. I'm just saying it's hard to do like a perfect trilogy on the PS1, and I think this is certainly in the arguments for being one. And I really enjoy these 3 Resident Evil games for sure. They definitely expanded upon the villains and like the more consistent boss battles and whatnot with like a same villain. So I mean, I guess that's kind of maybe a negative in some regard. You know, you have more variety. Like you had the snake showed up a couple times in the last game. You know, you fought that twice. You fought a giant spider. You fought like, um, the tyrant at the end, that kind of thing. The plant. You know, it's a little more variety. But here it's just like you kind of fight the same boss again and again and again, other than like the crocodile or the alligator or whatever. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the way I like originally like experienced this game. I used to watch my brother like play these games, but that was more specifically the first one. Um, I remember I had this demo disc. It was the very same demo disc that like got me into Tomba because it had that on there too. But it had this like preview for Resident Evil 2, and I would just sit there and watch it, and it was like, wow, this looks amazing. I'm gonna play the fuck out of this, you know, and um. So yeah, it's just really cool and iconic. And they had that cool ass commercial, which I don't know if we ever got here, if I ever got to see that on TV, but that was a cool commercial. You know, it was like Romero, like friggin' directed it, like the, you know, famous zombie guy from the movies there. So yeah, but it's a great game overall, and I really enjoy it. Maybe not as much as the first one, but it is a good expansion on a lot of what they were trying to establish in the first one, and they would expand a lot upon it in Resident Evil 3 there, especially like the upgrades to the guns and stuff. There's so much like upgrade potential and stuff in the third one. You can like make your own ammo and shit. It's crazy, like. And I feel like Mr. X is definitely like a really good beta for what Nemesis would become, and how iconic Nemesis would be. You know, like stars. You want stars? I'll give you stars. So badass. Leon's like, game over, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of badass. But when Jill says it, you want stars? I'll give you stars. That's fucking badass. You know, it's always awesome to like just nuke the enemy with your rocket launcher. That's always fun too. But yeah. Oh, the music is also really good. Not as good as the first one, I feel like, but at least like the police station and stuff is iconic. Are we still listening to this? How long? This is like 15 minutes long. What the fuck? Anyway, I really enjoyed this game. I had a really good time with it. Exploring it was fun, you know, like, definitely cool. It's been good to go back to this game. I really haven't played this game in like 15 years. Like, seriously, it's been that long. Probably since I got it on PS1. I played it a couple times back then, and like I said, I played it a couple times after that on the PC. But mainly I would stick to 1 and 3, and even 3 I haven't played in forever, at least since like high school, and you know, so long time ago. Unfortunately, I'm getting older now, so but yeah, looking forward to that. That'll be exciting to play Resident Evil 3. I really like Resident Evil 3 a lot. And you know what? I like Resident Evil 2 a lot. I like Resident Evil 1 a lot. I like Silent Hill a lot. I know we're not talking about that one, but I just replayed through that. I didn't really do a video about it or anything, but got all the 4 endings and all that. 5 endings, really, with the UFO ending and all that. But so that was fun. That was a good experience. Really like that game. That's my favorite horror game of all time. But going back to these has been really fun too. So here's for 3, and here's for when I go through the 2 remakes. I haven't done the Resident Evil 3 remake yet, so that'll be really interesting to play down the line. I don't know if I'll do them all like in a row, but I do want to do 3 next, and then maybe I'll take a break and like play Mario Odyssey or something, like one of those big games I've been missing for a while here. So until next time, keep it classic, stick around for more underrated reviews and underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Excuse me. Emily, out.